In today's video, I'm going to show you what I think is the best way to set up your lights in your studio. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video. And if this is your first time here, my name is Dan Quintero. I'm a commercial photographer based in Sydney, and I make videos to try and help you with your photography. And today I wanted to talk about a different method for mounting lights in your studio. Now, if you work with lights, typically you are going to be using something like this, which is your typical light stand. And these work really, they're great. They're easy to operate, they're affordable. However, my issue with them is really around here. You've got these three legs that stick out about a foot in each direction. So even though the light that you might be mounting is can be quite small, you've got this massive piece of real estate that's been taken up in your studio by the light stand itself. And if you've got a few of these around set up in your studio, you'll know how difficult it is to navigate your way around these light stands without actually tripping or kicking any of them, which is always why you should have a sandbag on these light stands if you are going to be using this. However, I use a different method when I can that gets around the whole thing, or the whole issue with the legs, and that is the varipole. Now, I'm not sure if you're familiar with this product. This is also called a variable pole, an auto pole. It's got lots of different names, but what it is it's a pole that actually just extends. So let me just set it up here so you can actually see the bottom and the top of the pole. So this pole is, I'll bring it around this way, has a mechanism in here, just a lever, which when you release it, the pole will extend. When you bring the lever down, it locks it in place. Now, it doesn't just lock it in place. You might be able to see here, I'll come a little closer to the camera so you can see this. But when I pull the lever down to lock it, it also extends by about another, I want to say about 3 inches, okay? So that, when you do that, it locks it, but it also extends the pole. There's a spring mechanism in there. So by doing that, it exerts force on two different surfaces. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to bring this down, and I'm going to set my varipole in here. Okay. Now, the first thing you need to do is you need to make sure that it's resting on the floor, and then release the mechanism. And then I'm going to just bring it up so that it's just touching the ceiling. I don't have to push or anything else. I need to make sure that it's reasonably straight as well, okay? So that's sort of straight enough for me. I'm going to then pull on the lever, and you'll notice that it's going to push even further into the ceiling. Like I said, it's got a spring mechanism in there, so it's not going to break or anything, but it's going to put a lot of tension in the between the two different surfaces. So then I bring this lever down, I'll lock it in place. Okay, there's a locking mechanism there, so if someone knocks it, it doesn't come loose. And now what you find is that you've got this secure pole here where we can mount things onto, okay? Now, it sort of looks like the light stand, but of course we don't have a mounting point on the pole itself, so we have to attach one of those to the pole itself, okay? And the way that you do that is with a clamp. Now for me, I like to use super clamps. I'll just move this out of the way so you can see. So this is a super clamp. We're going to attach this to the actual pole itself. Now, something that I just want to point out with super clamps, I'll come a little closer so you can see this. When you buy one of these out of the box, it's going to look like that. And you'll notice that you've got the top jaw there, okay, which is flat, and then the bottom jaw as well, which is flat. So that is designed then to mount down. The way that you tighten it is by turning this knob here, and that's going to come down, and it's going to attach onto a flat surface, okay? So if you're putting it on, say, mounting it onto a door or a shelf, you would use it in that configuration. However, because we're trying to mount it into something that's round, you'll see that on the bottom of the bottom jaw of the clamp, there's this little piece of rubber, okay, or plastic, which comes off. And so the bottom jaw turns into this sort of V shape here, okay? Now that is going to help when we attach that to the varipole, which essentially is a pipe, because it's going to allow the pole itself to dip into that bottom jaw even further, and it's going to get a much better bite on the pole itself. And then at the bottom of the clamp, we've got all these different mounting options, and I'm going to show you how those works in a second. You'll see that we've got some screw holes in there, okay? And then you've also got this big mount here, which is the one that we're going to use. But let's put this on the pole and I'll show you how this works. So I'm going to attach this on the pole. I'm going to tighten it up in there, okay? And that's nice and secure now. And this mount hole here that I showed you earlier, essentially it's the same thing that you find on a lot of these light stands, okay? So the spigot that is on the top of a light stand, which you can actually remove on most light stands, will fit into that hole there, okay? Now, in order to put that in there, there is a safety mechanism. Again, I'll come closer so you can actually see this. But there is a safety pin down here, and you need to push that so that you can then insert the spigot. If you don't push that, it won't go in. So you'll see that I push the safety mechanism in there, and then that goes in there, and then I can just tighten it up in there, okay? And then what you have is a nice secure mount. The reason that that safety pin is there is that if this gets loose for whatever reason, the light won't come off, okay? So you need to push that button before that's released, okay? So what we're going to do is we're just going to mount that there like that, and then this whole thing goes on the pole itself. And now you've got a nice secure mount in there where you can grab your light, okay? And you can secure it now to the pole, okay? And you can still move the light around, and you can move it in this direction as well, all right? So this works really, really well. Now, I would only recommend that you mount your light this way if you are going to use it with something like, say, a small reflector. So something that doesn't have a lot of weight to the front of the light. If you put this big softbox on the light itself, the light's going to be front heavy, and it's going to want to do this, which means you're going to have to tighten the bottom part of the light mount quite tight so that it doesn't tilt forward. And that's going to put a lot of pressure on the light. So for me, if you're going to use the light on its own, or like I said, with a simple reflector, then that's fine. But typically the way that I mount it is a little different. I'm going to show you that now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the spigot from here. And what I'm going to do is, again, I'll come a little closer so that you can see. This is an extension arm, okay? So instead of putting the spigot in there like we did before, I'm going to put my extension arm in there. The extension arm has a mount for you to fit the spigot, and then that goes in there, and you mount that onto the clamp itself. So that's what you end up with there. You tighten this up, and now what you have is a much better solution for mounting your light, okay? So what we'll do is we'll put it here, okay, and then we will mount a light there. And because the pin is now vertical rather than horizontal, what you find is that it's much better balanced, and it doesn't put as much pressure on the actual mount itself, the light mount in there. And now you can move this in this direction. Okay, you can move it in that direction as well. So it gives you a lot more options. The other thing that this does is it places a bit of distance between the light and the pole. So in this case, if I didn't have that, if it didn't have that extra room, this room here, I mean, right? When I turn this way, the back of the light would hit the pole, okay? So that is giving me enough room there for me to be able to turn the light and just set it up in exactly the angle that I want to have it, right? So it gives me a lot of flexibility. So that is what I think a much better way of mounting a light than using something like this. You don't have any legs in here. So if you've got this set up next to a tabletop, say that you're shooting some product, or even if you're shooting a subject, like a person, you could have this permanently mounted, and you could set the light exactly at the height that you want. And you can walk right up to the light, you can shoot next to the light, and you're freely walking around in your studio without tripping on anything. So that, I think, is a much better way of setting up lights, if you can, than using something like this. However, there is an even better way of setting it up than what you see here. And I'm going to show you that next. But before I do, if you are finding this video useful or helpful in any sort of way, if you could please click the like button, it will make a huge difference to the channel. And if you want to see more content like this, make sure that you subscribe to the channel. That way you don't miss out on any future videos that I publish. But now that you've seen this, let me show you an even better way of mounting the lights. Now, I'm going to have to move to a different part of my living room here to show you this, because we are going to set up the bar or the pole in a horizontal format, okay? But these walls are longer than what my pole extends in here, so I'm going to have to set it up in front of my television over there, but just to give you an idea how that works. So yes, let me tear all this down and I'll set it up over there and we'll come back in 2 seconds. Okay, so now I've got the pole in the horizontal orientation, and honestly, this is the way that I like to work if I can, because it means that I've got no pole, I've got nothing to get in the way. In fact, when I set up a light there, I will have the wires running along the length of the pole, and they just come down at either end. So let's set up a light and I'll show you how this works. And honestly, I didn't plan it this way, but it's a typical scenario of where you would use something like this over a light stand, because in here, I've got some furniture and I'm not able to put a light stand here. So if I needed a light here, I would have to move all this stuff out of the way. And again, not very practical. So I'm going to put a light up here. Now, for this, I don't think I need the extension arm. And by the way, I've got affiliate links for everything that I've talked about here today, so you can check that out in the description if you're interested. I don't need the extension arm. I think I'm just going to mount the light directly onto the super clamp. So I'm going to take the spigot out, and I will put the spigot in here, tighten that up. That's nice and secure now. And then my light goes in there. Let's loosen this up a bit. Okay, and set that up, make sure that's gone all the way in. There. And now I've got a light that I can move around still. I can turn left and right. Tighten that up nice and tight. And now I've got a light that I can use where I can get really close to whatever it is that I'm photographing, and it's just not in the way. Like I said, I would run the cables that way as well, or that way. It just frees up a bunch of space in your studio. Now, obviously, some things to consider when you're running when you've got the pole in this orientation here. You need to make sure that you don't overload the pole itself, okay? So when you buy these, there'll be some specifications in the pole. It comes with a pamphlet that tells you how much load you can place on the poles themselves. So make sure to not exceed that. If you are concerned, another thing that you can do is you can get 2 additional poles where you place one underneath each end of the horizontal pole. So you set them up vertically, essentially as stands, support arms, and you can get special arms or hooks that are designed specifically for the purpose of providing extra support if you are going to run it like this all the time with much heavier equipment. Although I've actually had a couple of lights, I've had 2 lights and a microphone as well hanging on one of these, and it was set up like that for weeks and actually months, I think, and it didn't even move an inch. I actually made a little mark to see if it would slide down, and it didn't move down at all. So this works really well. Obviously, if you've got it in the vertical orientation, you're going to be able to put more weight on it as well. That's just physics. The other thing to watch out for is that when you are mounting these, you need to consider the type of walls that you're using or the type of ceiling that you're using. If you have something like drywall, then you are going to have to take some precautions, okay? The force that this places on the wall could potentially cause it to go through the wall. So you need to make sure that behind the wall there is a stud or some sort of support. And even then, what I would do is I would place a board, something like a pancake box, about the size of a chopping board, and you will put that on the wall itself. Again, find where the stud is, place the board on top, and then you would, when you put in your pole, it's going to then distribute that force across a larger section or a larger area of the wall, and it's going to be a lot safer. Obviously, if you're going to use that technique, you're going to need a couple of people to help you. So you need to keep those things in consideration. And don't forget that ceilings are also made of the same stuff as well, gyprock or drywall. So take precautions as well. Put a board so that you're not going through the ceiling as well. I don't have to worry about that. I've got brick walls here and I've got cement ceiling, and so I don't have to worry about that. But please make sure that you take that into consideration if you're shooting somewhere where you're unfamiliar. The other thing is that I guess one of the negative things about this is that if you find that you need to bring this light down maybe a foot or so, then obviously it's not as practical as having a light stand. With a light stand, you can just bring it down really easily. With something like this, you've got to take the light off the pole, take the pole off, bring the pole down, set the light back up again. But really, I find myself really not doing that very often, and so that's not really something that bothers me at all, given the benefits of having all this space and just the better conditions to work when you've got everything that's just out of the way, okay? Anyway, that is it in the horizontal section or in the horizontal orientation. Again, I prefer to do it this way. If I can't do it this way, I'll set it up vertically. But I wanted to show you those two methods, which I think, especially if you're working in a home studio where we don't have a lot of space, then something like this can be like absolutely brilliant to set up in a home studio like my one, where your space suddenly becomes bigger because you've got more space that is available to you because it's not taken up by legs and C-stands and all sorts of other stuff on the floor. So that's why I wanted to make a video about this, and I hope that it's something that you may be able to incorporate in your studio. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, again, please don't forget to click the like button, and also consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. And if you have any questions about anything that I covered here today, the best place to leave them is in the comments section below. Otherwise, you can reach me through any of the usual social media platforms, and you're going to find all the links in the description. Again, I hope you enjoyed this video. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.